Today, a special edition of Face the State, a full half hour with Senator Chris Dodd. We will cover a wide variety of topics, from the recent polls that rock the political landscape in our state to the controversies, to the issues the senator is working on right now. And Senator, thanks for being with us on this Sunday morning.
Thank you, Dennis, very much. Glad to be with you.
First of all, let's get to those poll numbers and let's look at them one more time. The first one we have shows you in a hypothetical matchup with former Congressman Rob Simmons, who of course served in the district that you once represented. It shows you trailing the congressman by 1.43% to 42%. This is a QU poll. Basically a tie. Against State Senator Sam Caligiuri, you fare better, 47% to 34%, but still not cracking that 50% against the lesser-known Caligiuri. And one of the state's premier bloggers, Genghis Khan, wrote this, quote, "These numbers are nothing short of catastrophic for a long-time incumbent like Dodd," Genghis Khan. So first of all, I want to ask you, because you were in the 70s for much of your career in terms of approval ratings, you've never really had a difficult race. When you saw these numbers, were you hurt?
No hurt. Listen, I accept the numbers what they are, and it is what it is, and we're in March. And would I like them to be better? You bet I would, Dennis. Anyone sitting in this seat who would tell you they didn't care about it would be not being very honest with you. So you'd like it to be better. But also, I think you, and because you understand politics in this state very well, we're almost, not quite 2 years, but 18 months, 20 months away from an election. And between now and then, so many things can happen and occur. And I would also tell you this. I think the politics are, particularly in the times we're in, 20,000 people a day losing their jobs, 10,000 a day getting a foreclosure notice on their doorstep, retirement accounts dropping like a rock. People are not so much interested in the job that I have. They want to know whether or not I'm interested in keeping the job they have or the one they've lost and how they get it back. They're worried about credit cards. They're worried about the economy overall. They're worried about their kids' future. And that's the politics. If I do my job on that, and if people see me out there working on their behalf, fighting for them, then I'm a great believer that polls take care of themselves. So this is a snapshot. I understand it. I understand what it is. But I intend to work my head off for the people of this state, as I have and tried to for the last 25 years in the Senate, and we'll keep at it. At the end of the day, they'll make a decision whether or not I've done that job or not. If they perceive that I've done it, I'll win. If I haven't done it, then you'll have other consequences. But I'm planning on running. I'm going to fight like heck for the state, as I have over the years, and I'll let the polls take care of themselves.
Has anyone talked to you about retiring? There were reports out there that some senior Democrats...
Other than my family from time to time. They'll appreciate that. No, not really. I mean, listen, anybody who tells you don't think about that also isn't being terribly honest. And I've been blessed to be elected 5 times by the people of this state, served in the House for 3 terms, and I'm now in a senior position in the Senate, I think, to really help out the state during difficult times in the country, and that's what I'd like to be able to do and fight hard for them. But again, I'll say to you what I said a moment ago. At the end of the day, they want to know whether or not where you are. This about who wins the Senate seat is one of the furthest things from most people's minds. They're hurting in this state, and they're hurting across the country, and they really want to get a sense that you're in their corner. And if you do that and you work hard for them, they'll be for you, or maybe not for you, but you have a better chance in the end. But that will determine the outcome.
So you're saying that the economy, basically they're blaming the economy, they're taking it on you with these low poll numbers?
Well, I think it's part of it. Look, if you've lost your job or you worry about losing it and the earning power has declined, I think everybody around. I mean, it's hard to say when you're looking at this thing going, here we are in the worst economic shape we've been in almost a century in many ways. This is not a great time. And I ask you, well, what do you think about the politicians in office, the people representing you? I don't think that's kind of a natural thing at this point you're feeling, so certainly some of that. But obviously some of these other questions have been raised clearly are impacting this decision as well.
Your last approval rating was at 46% this past week, up from, I believe, 41 a few weeks ago. Yet Governor Rell's is 75%, so people aren't blaming her for the economy. What do you make of that?
Well, she's kind of transcends a lot. She took over in a difficult circumstance, and people like her. And
people liked you when she first took over, too. I mean, they still like you, but, I mean, according to the polls, there are fewer of them.
Yeah. Well, I think, I think she'd be the first to say if she was sitting here that don't rely on that number either, whatever her plans may be. Anybody who would tell you that they had a low number and couldn't win or a high number and couldn't lose, my experience, Dennis, would be you be careful. Don't rely on numbers, either bad numbers or great numbers.
Toward the end of your father's last term, he had a tough time, and you're going through, obviously, this has been a rough couple of months for you. Do you relate to him more now? Do you think about him more than...
I think about my dad every day, and a remarkable man, did great things. Just published the book of his letters to my mother from Nuremberg, Germany, in 1945 and 46, when I was a year old, that I never knew existed until a few years ago. And my appreciation of him as I got older. I think most of us as we think about our parents as we get older, appreciate them more. My mother raised 6 children. I've got 2. I don't know how in the world she did 6. And my father just was a person of deep principle and deep conviction. I still have people to this day. I was on a flight the other day and a guy stopped me and he said, I don't know you, but my dad loved your dad. And hardly a week goes by, Dennis. Even my father was over 100, if you're alive today. People say those things. So my admiration and respect for him is boundless.
So do you think of him more during these tough times,
Not
you think?
particularly. I mean, he had a tough time. You're exactly right.
Yeah.
There was a rough ending for him, and he took it hard. There's no question about it.
You taking this hard?
Well, sure, you don't like. Who wants to be? I'd rather be talking about anything else in the world with you than these things. Anybody tell you that? What's the matter with you?
When you ask people who they blame for the financial crisis, well, you know, many people say President Bush, but of course he's gone. They also say Barney Frank and Chris Dodd. Do you bear any responsibility as chairman of the Senate Banking Committee for the financial crisis?
Well, first, I became chairman 2 years ago, and these problems, of course, started about a decade ago. I think most people recognize. We've had 8 years of the Bush administration, 11 of the last 12 years in Republican control of both houses of Congress when they chaired the committees and ran the show. Now, having said that to you, and the temptation to want to lay it all off on them would be tempting. But I don't think that's quite right. I think everybody around, we all should have been more vigilant about these things in many ways. But certainly, I'd like to think over certainly my tenure as chairman of this committee, had 82 hearings in the last Congress, started the first one on the foreclosure. Even my Republican colleague, Richard Shelby, has said to me over and over again, had they only listened to you in January and February of 2007, this problem wouldn't be anywhere near as serious as it is. So I'd like to think on credit card issues, on working on behalf of families out there, economic issues, I've been in the forefront on those battles over the years and continue to do so today. But clearly, when you had a regulatory system and an administration that just didn't care about this, an SEC that was not functioning, Securities Exchange Commission, a Federal Reserve, despite the fact we gave them the power to deal with abusive and deceptive lending practices, sat there and did nothing about it and allowed these foreclosures to mount and mount over the years. I think the culpability, the bulk of it, if that's where the root cause of the problem is, they're the ones who must be accountable as to why they allowed that to happen. And that deregulation environment, and that this is a laissez-faire attitude, has been very dangerous for our country.
So when the troubles first started percolating in early 2007, you know, there are some people who have criticized your decision to move your family to Iowa at the end of 2007. Yeah. Did you take your eye off the ball at all during that time of the banking committee? And
no,
was that a wise decision looking back on it?
Well, I wanted to be with my family, and it was 6 weeks. It wasn't a year. It was a little before Thanksgiving through Christmas that year. I don't recall us being much in session in those days during the holidays. It was hard to get to Iowa, about one flight a day, and I have a 4-year-old, then 2-year-old at the time, and my 5-year-old at the time, and wife, and I wanted to be with them. I like being with my family, and so they came out. We rented a little place for a few weeks, and that was the presidential race. And I'm very grateful to people in the state who, after a number of years, said, if you want to take a swing at this, go ahead. I'm glad I tried. Obviously, it became pretty clear. I was out pretty quickly in the race.
You were.
And recognized this was going to be a Barack Obama-Hillary Clinton race.
Let's talk about the countrywide mortgage controversy for a bit. Early this year, you allowed select reporters to look at some of the documents, yet many people do not believe all the questions have been answered. I mean, you've been elected 5 times, one of the senior statesmen in the Senate, and obviously these poll numbers are, you know, I mean, they're not good. Do you think you should just put everything out there and let reporters make copies, bring in a mortgage expert and examine them and see what's out there?
We did, Dennis. I know, look, I mean, I did what other people have done, what John McCain did with his taxes, what Joe Biden and others have done. They put those all out. They were there for as long as anyone wanted to go and pour over them. Obviously, I had things there, including personal financial disclosure statements and so forth, just sort of throwing them up in the internet age and so forth. I'm a public person, but also I've got children, I got a family, and some degree of privacy.
But this could cost you your Senate seat. I mean,
I don't think so. I think people, again, we, in fact, the reporters from this station were there to go over the stuff that day. I was interviewed by them that day. Anybody who wanted to come in, we weren't closing the door all that day and that evening if they wanted to. Most stayed a couple of hours and went through this stuff, but we were prepared to have everybody stay as long as they want, answer any questions they had about it at the time. And I feel strong. That's my regret is I should have done that last July instead of a month or two ago. I mean, I sat there and believed that this matter before the Ethics Committee would be resolved fairly quickly. That was my mistake. And I should have done what I did earlier. I think that would have addressed a lot of the questions that people raised. Why isn't he coming forward? What is he hiding? And I wasn't hiding anything. I just thought rather than do this twice, I get the answer one way or the other and explain myself one way or the other. So if I regret anything deeply, I regret the fact that I waited too long to have that moment when I made this stuff available to people.
So there are no plans to release any more or to...
No, I think we've done that pretty much. I'm going to answer any questions people have about it, and a lot of them are public documents, you know.
One question, Robert Feinberg, a loan officer with Countrywide, claims he has papers that he says prove you knew you were getting preferential treatment. Is he lying?
Lying, I don't like the word lying. He was not our loan officer.
Is he telling the truth?
No, he's not telling the truth. Thank you for framing it that way for me. And I didn't know at all. Listen, if they had ever tried, this company, ever said, you know what, Senator, we got a special deal for you. Believe me, Dennis, that would have been the end of the conversation. The rates that we received were rates that were market rates, publicly available to people. In fact, the official at Countrywide, in the week we ended up with one of these loans, announced a loan that was substantially less than the one we were paying. We negotiated. It was the lowest interest rates in almost 50 years in the late spring of 2003. We went out and we were a customer of theirs, and we thought about refinancing, as millions of people did. And so we did what the lending tree says. When banks compete, customers win. And so we did. We went out and we shopped around, and we had alternative rates. We didn't have any obligation to stay with Countrywide. They met those rates, which have been advertised in newspapers. People can go and look for them to this day. I would never, ever, sacrifice my integrity or credibility by sitting there and getting some sweetheart deal with any lending institution whatsoever. And I'm offended that people have charged me with that without asking me the question, did we do that? And I've answered it. And believe me, those rates, and people can compare them with the rates that are out there.
Senator Dodd, we're going to take a quick moment. We'll be right back after this commercial break.